I'm Jennifer Lont, a Homeworks by Precept consultant, and we are back in the schoolroom today to talk about teaching reading to advanced students. First of all, do you even need a reading program if your kids are good readers? I know how it is. My kids carry around 2 or 3 chapter books at a time sometimes because they never know when they'll finish one and need another one. So if your kids are good readers, if they love to read, do they really need a reading program? Well, the short answer is yes. There are several components of a reading program, and they include more than just the literature. We have, for smaller grades, there are smaller volumes of readers so they can handle them better, and they will find that there are all kinds of things to read in our readers. You will find narratives and folk tales and tall tales and plays. There are informational articles, different types of nonfiction. You'll find things from the Bible. You will find biographical things. Just a big variety to get your kids used to reading a variety of literature, not just their go-to, their favorite kinds of literature, but it gives them practice with all kinds of literature. And then we have a work text, and the work text helps them. It's one of the ways that they can respond to what they've read. We also have phonics practice, and here you need phonics. You need strong phonics if you're going to continue to be a good reader. But there's more than that. There are things like reading charts and graphs, getting information from those types of things, practicing the elements of a story, whether it's plot or setting or tone or idioms, learning about how language is used in poetry in different ways. So there are a lot of skills and exercises in the workbook, but that's not all you need. I think that the teacher's edition is one of the most important parts, because in this teacher's edition, not only do you have notes on how to teach vocabulary and background information, but you also have questions to help with comprehension. That's the goal of reading anyways, to understand a written message. So this is super important. You will find questions and answers that go with each selection, and you can use them to help your child learn to develop higher thinking skills. And they in turn can take their skills in reading and use them in science and history and Bible and in the rest of everything in life. So yes, reading is a really important thing to do with your advanced student. I've mentioned before that even though my boys get great scores on standardized tests, I don't skip up a level or I don't skip any grades, but we do modify the curriculum. Mrs. Walker, our video course teacher, has likened BJU Press Homeschool Curriculum to a buffet. It is filled with wonderful choices, but there is more on the buffet than you can ever eat. I used to be one of those moms that tried to do it all, and I still have tendencies to try to do it all. So I am learning every year to try to modify things. Because if you try to do everything, mom ends up frustrated, kids end up frustrated, and you get burnt out. So on the other hand, you also don't want to cut away too much of that good curriculum. It's there for your child's good, and you don't want to cut away something that your child will need. Last year, my family went to a really nice buffet, and one of my nephews came back to the table with 1 pickled beet on his plate. And we all laughed because he was at a buffet and he didn't even get enough on his plate that would nourish him for a meal. So you don't want to do that either. So I'm hoping that this video will help you to determine how to get a balanced diet on your plate. What you choose one day may not be the same as what you choose the next day at the buffet, but try to get a balanced diet, and I will tell you about some modifications, some things that we choose so that you can be challenging your advanced student. So how do you choose what to put on your plate? I think it's really helpful to start with some standardized test scores. Those tests will give you scores on things like vocabulary, phonics skills, comprehension, literal comprehension or reading between the lines, reading charts and graphs, listening skills. There are so many things that the standardized test scores will tell you, and it'll break it down by category and give you a number. Then you can take those scores. You don't even have to tell your child what the scores are. That will take some pressure off. Take those scores and find areas that you want to build up, and make sure that you are including activities from our reading curriculum to help your child strengthen that area. If your kids are getting stressed out about standardized test scores, I would encourage you to encourage them. If you're stressed, they will be stressed. And whenever I gave standardized tests to kids, I would tell them that this is not a pass or fail test. It's not like any other test we do in school. It's more like playing whack-a-mole. Have you ever played that arcade game? The little moles pop up through the holes and you've got a mallet and you try to hit them on the head. No one sits there and wastes time talking about the one mole that they missed. They just go on it and try to hit another and try to get their score as high as it can be. Same thing with standardized tests. Just tell your kids, get as many as you can. If you can't get one, move on and get the next one. So standardized tests don't have to be scary, but they can be very, very useful. So when you get some standardized test scores, they will give you an idea of how your child compares to all the other kids in the nation. Just like when you go to the doctors and the doctor checks your child's height and weight, the standardized test scores will do the same thing. They will let you know if your child is making progress, if he is healthy and growing. If there is some kind of a weakness or deficiency there, it may show up, and that way we can help the child, do something about it, teach to that weakness. So look at your child's reading scores. Most kids will get between a 23 and a 76. Those are average scores. But if your child is getting a 77 or above, that is above average. There is a smaller percentage that will get an 89 to 95, and then 4% of the population will get a 95 or above. They're doing really, really well. So look at those scores and determine if your child is above average, really above average, and you can adjust based on those scores. Now go to the front matter of your teacher's edition. There are ideas for remediation, there are ideas for teaching those average students, and there are ideas for adapting for the kids who do really well. The first thing you can do is pick up the pace. The second thing is focus on higher level thinking. And the third thing is to give them lots and lots of reading material to challenge them. First of all, let's talk about how to pick up the pace. The reading selections in BJU Press Homeschool curriculum are broken up into daily lessons. So one story might take you 2 days to get through. It might be divided into 3 or even sometimes into 5 days. So a normal lesson, you would teach your child new vocabulary, ask them a couple questions to get them focused on the text, and then they will read silently the selection. And then you will come back afterwards. You will ask them some questions to check on comprehension. Maybe have them read a small selection aloud to you. And then you'd work on the workbook pages that go with it, and that build up some skills that have to do with that particular type of literature. So if we're going to pick up the pace, we're going to be combining some days here. And one of the easiest ways to do that is to let your child read the entire story in one sitting. So on the first day, you might go through vocabulary, and then they might read the entire selection, and that might be all you do for reading that day. Maybe you have a workbook page or two that they do after they read. And then the second day, you can come back and you can open up that teacher's manual and you can choose a section, because you don't need to ask every single question on every single lesson. So choose a section. Maybe it's something that your child would be particularly interested in or is exciting part of the story, or maybe it's something that you think that they will need. For example, if it's a poem, I make sure I hit comprehension questions on poetry, because reading a poem is different than reading an article, and that's different than reading a story. So pick places where you want to ask questions. You don't have to do it all the time every day. So the questions that you ask are going to have different levels of thinking. The easiest kind of question is like just facts. You'd ask a question and the child can find the answer right there in the text. And that's a skill that they need to develop, knowing to go to the text and find the answers. And then the next level would be reading between the lines, something that is not completely spelled out, but something that is implied. And then you can work on higher level thinking questions. They're all right there for you in the text. So pick and choose, have a conversation with your child. Why do you think that happened? Or do you think that was wise? Or what would God think about that? Or what would you have done if you were that character? So as your child gets better and better at answering these comprehension questions, you can spend more time focusing on the critical ones and not ask as many of the literal ones. When you move through the curriculum at an accelerated pace, you're going to have extra time for things like book links. Now, Medallion has been one of our family's favorite book links, and book links are in-depth novel studies that go along with our BJU Press Homeschool Reading curriculum. So you will find vocabulary instruction, you will find comprehension questions, you will find workbook type activities. There are also sometimes crafts or games or songs, just different things that your kids can do to enjoy not just understanding the literature but responding to it. So we've really enjoyed book links in this house. And whenever our kids, whenever they were younger, we made them wait until the grade that the book link was in. So like if my older son read one in 3rd grade, the younger son had to wait until 3rd grade, and that just made that more exciting for him whenever he got there. And then another thing we did, when you finish a book link, sometimes there are other books in the series that go with it. For Medallion, there is a prequel called Shield. So whenever my son finished Medallion, we went ahead and gave him Shield, and he just loved it. And it was just neat that he could take part of his lesson to go read a book. It was just fun. One of the biggest problems that we've had with having voracious readers in our house is that we can't keep up with the books that they read. There's no way I can pre-read everything that my kids read, and yet I don't want them to be reading junk. I don't want them to be reading things that are harmful for them either. There are so many books in the library that just, they've got a bad worldview, is what it is. And even though we do read some of those books together and discuss those things together, which is good and healthy to do, I don't want my children to have a steady diet of reading these things on their own silently and not discussing them. So we have found that the reading curriculum has helped us in a few ways to find extra reading material. The first way is that sometimes there will be an excerpt in the curriculum that comes from a book. And so Encyclopedia Brown is in Reading 3. There are a couple mysteries in there. So my boys enjoyed those. And then the reading lesson prompts you to ask your child, how would you find these in the library? Let's go find some more Encyclopedia Brown books. So they're not just giving them things to read, but they're teaching them how to find more good things to read. We also enjoyed Marguerite Henry's books, Misty of Chincoteague. There was a section in one of the readers, and so my son found these and looked for these, whether at yard sales or wherever he could find them. So sometimes an excerpt will give you a jumping off point. Also, we have Journey Forth books in our house. Now, Journey Forth is a division of BJU Press, and they publish books that are wholesome, and they have a biblical worldview, and they're just excellent. We have like 100 of these books in our home, and there is a catalog just of Journey Forth books. So I would encourage you to take a look at that. See if you can grab some of those books, because you know you can safely hand them to your kids. And even if your kids are reading above grade level, they're still going to be safe for your kids to read. There are mysteries, historical fiction. This one's kind of like a realistic fiction, but it's set in an older time. And this is a missionary biography. So there are just so many kinds of books, and they are for preschoolers through young adults. So you will find something there for everyone. And we have really enjoyed having those books in our home. The third thing that we have found that's helpful in keeping our kids in books is suggested reading lists. Sometimes at the end of your child's workbook, there will be a few pages that are titled Summer Reading List. So you can take a look at those. You can start requesting them at your library, or maybe finding them at yard sales. If you don't have those pages in the back of your child's workbook, try looking online in the resources at BJU Press Homeschool. They have compiled a list of books that they think are appropriate for small children all the way up through high school. So that has been very helpful too. Then when you get your child reading lots and lots of good books, it's important for your child to respond. Not just for them to take it in and to understand the message, but they need to be able to tell others about what they have read and communicate what they have learned. So Reading 2 has some fun book activities in it. One of them is just making a bookmark. This isn't, a big formal report. It's just a way to show something that they've learned in a simple way. So they would write the title of the book and the author's name, and then they would draw maybe their favorite character or draw their favorite scene from the book. Later on in the year, one of the other book activities was working with a paper bag, where your child would draw a picture on the front, write the title and the author again, and then put a few items inside the paper bag that he would later be able to pull out to help him tell someone what the book was about. So responding to what they have learned is important too. Some days you might just want to cut out a few workbook pages and instead do something like, if you just read a tall tale, let's write a tall tale together. I remember doing that with one of my boys, and it was so much fun. And he got to display what he knew about tall tales, that they include humor and exaggeration. And so we worked together on that, and it improved his writing skills as well. Or maybe you've just come to a play in the reader. One day, yes, he does need to read through the play on his own, but the next day, divvy up the characters. If you can, get the whole family involved. Have fun. Put on a play. Even if you don't do the props, you can. But just have fun. Do the voices together. Be expressive. Those are kinds of things that will help your child show what he knows, because he needs to understand the story if he's going to use the appropriate inflection and expression in his voice. So look for ways that you can allow your child to show what he knows and respond to what he's read. So again, think of this as a balanced diet. You don't want to cut out all the workbook pages, but you don't want to skip all the writing assignments either. So if your child is doing well, make sure you're taking some of this and some of that and pulling it together and give him a well-rounded experience. When my second son was in kindergarten, my goal for him was not to learn to read. My goal for him was to learn to love to read. I didn't want him to just do well in school. I wanted him to do well in life. I wanted him to love learning and love reading. And one of the ways that I accomplished that goal was to read to my boys. I read piles and piles of picture books. I even read nonfiction books to my boys. I think that's important to do when they're young so that they know that a book doesn't just have to be a story to be interesting. You can learn facts that are interesting, and reading books about animals, especially to younger children, is a really easy way to do that. It prepares them for science and history, learning in those content areas, as well as learning for life. So I read lots and lots of books. We moved on to chapter books, and then I never stopped. And my boys are finishing 5th and 8th grade this year, and we are reading The Lord of the Rings. Take a look at how thick this thing is. We are almost at the end. We're on page 915, and I can't wait to get back to it and find out what happens. There are so many benefits to reading together as a family. There are academic benefits, like your child will have an increased attention span, increased vocabulary. Your child is also going to be soaking in all of your reading skills if you read out loud, because you are modeling fluent, expressive reading. So your child will just pick up on that. The more he hears you do it, the better he will do it. So, but beyond all of the academic reasons, and I'm sure there are many, many more, one of the reasons that we love this is just because it's something we enjoy together. It builds our relationship. We have been places and books together. We have shared experiences. We have inside jokes. We have just had fun together. We speculate about the plot and what will happen next and who did what. So we enjoy doing all of that together. And it has challenged my boys. It has made them better readers. Don't be afraid to adjust the curriculum to meet the needs of your child. You have a whole buffet from which to choose, and it's all good stuff. Just make sure that you're getting a balanced diet. Make sure that you are working on vocabulary and comprehension and those workbook skills, and that you are allowing your child to respond to what he reads. You can pick up the pace. You can focus most of your attention on the higher level thinking questions, and then make sure you're providing your child with lots and lots of good quality reading material. I hope this has been helpful. If you have any more questions or if you'd like to discuss your situation, just send me a message. I would love to talk to you. Thanks so much for watching.